What I want to do today is take apart the gospel and explain a little bit about it, because although it is a simple story, I think it contains great truth that can speak to a struggling heart. I think everyone here this morning, at one time or another, has experienced unexpected difficulties, some bigger than others. And at times, those struggles can lead a person to ask the question, why? Isn't it true? And we can find a purpose in the struggles of life. It helps us to endure the pain. The gospel has something to say to this. It's a story about a problem that arises during a joyful wedding celebration. They ran out of wine. Now that may not seem like a major problem to us today, but at the time of Jesus, the absence of wine at a wedding celebration was a social embarrassment. It was seen as an insult, a great insult, to the guests that were invited. And so let's take a closer look at that story. Jesus is there at that wedding, and we have the presence of a problem, which, by the way, is the first good point to be made. The presence of Jesus does not always guarantee the absence of problems. They were both present in the same place at the same time, the problem and Jesus. And so, let me say it again. The presence of Jesus does not always guarantee the absence of problems. But, is Jesus aware of the problem? Of course he is. He's all-knowing. He knows the problem exists, but he allows it to exist. It's the mother of Jesus who takes the problem to him. Now, what I want us to notice in Mary is not only what she does, but also what she doesn't do. She doesn't start pointing the finger and blaming the guilty party who didn't plan correctly for the crowd that was expected. She doesn't get frustrated or angry. She doesn't say in her frustration, who could have made such a mistake? Oh. Nor is it like some of us, and let me just say that like the witty, who like to go around and share the gossip with comadre, saying, "Ay, comadre, have you heard? How embarrassing for the family. They ran out of wine. They probably didn't have enough money to throw such a big party." But what they were thinking, you know what, I bet it was that uncle of theirs. You know, he likes the bubbly. He probably started early this morning and kept drinking, and now they don't have enough. Anyway, I gotta go. I gotta call my other comadre and let her know too. You know what? Mary doesn't do any of that. She simply takes the problem to Jesus and says, they have no more wine. That is just as much a request as it is an act of faith. Because Mary doesn't tell Jesus what to do, nor does she know what he's going to do. In the great faith that she has in her son, she leaves the problem to him to resolve in the way that he chooses. She just simply tells the servants to also respond in faith, doing whatever Jesus, her son, asks of them. Now, let's look at that initial response of Jesus to his mother. Just call it what it is. It seems a bit rude, does it not? He says, "Woman, how does your concern affect me? My hour has not yet come." Now, when I read that, I thought of some modern mothers of today. I know some mothers in today's world, if their son would have responded to them in that manner, the story might have been a little different. I could see a mother of today saying, "Child, I did not raise you that way. You get in there right now and you do something about it because you can." But Mary is pretty calm, even after receiving that initial response from Jesus. She doesn't storm off, planning to take the problem into her own hands and fix it. No, she leaves it all up to her son Jesus and tells his servants, do whatever he tells you. Now, do you think Mary knew what Jesus was going to do? We have no reason to believe that she did. Whatever Jesus decided to do in that situation was okay with Mary. Her words were, do whatever my son tells you to do. If he says, do nothing, then do nothing. If he says, chalk it up to experience, chalk it up to experience. If he says, sit down for Diet Coke, go get Diet Coke. But her words are, do whatever he tells you to do. The lesson that Mary teaches us in this gospel is, when there is a problem, take it to Jesus and leave it there. That's all we have to do. Take it to Jesus and leave it there. But how good are you at that? Me either. I'm very good at taking a problem to Jesus, but I'm not very good in simply leaving it there and leaving it all in his hands. At times, I tend to take it back. At times, I walk away, and instead of having that spirit of peace, I have that spirit of anxiety, wondering where all this is going to go. I was thinking about this within myself the other day while I was in the kitchen, and I saw my toaster. What if I treated my toaster like I treated my problems? Let's pretend my toaster is broken. And so what do I do with a broken toaster? I know I can't fix it. And so I take it to the toaster fixer. I walk into the shop and I tell the man behind the counter, I have a problem with my toaster. It's not working. Would you fix it for me? And he says, you know what? I can do that. So I set the toaster on the counter, I say thank you, and I walk away. And let me ask you, where is the problem? Is the problem in my hands? No. I leave it with the one who can fix it. It would be crazy to think that when I walk out that door, I think, you know what? I met Mr. Toaster Fixer, and he's my help. And I walk back into that shop and tell the man, I can help you, Mr. Toaster Fixer. He would say, no, you can't. If you could fix your own toaster, you would not have brought it to me. Now, leave your problem with me and be on your way. Okay? And so I'm on my way. And as I walk away, I take only 2 steps. And then I turn around and say, you're not done yet? How long is this going to take? I know that's a silly example. A bit exaggerated, because come on. We wouldn't do that, would we? But how many times do we do that to our Heavenly Father? He says, leave your problem with me, and I will work on it. You don't need to worry. I know the solution within my great plan. I am God, and I'm capable of this. But even with that assurance, how many times do we try to take that problem back? How many times do we try to fix it on our own? Why are we so thick-headed to think that we have a better solution to the one who created the universe? Or how many times do we lose that patience, thinking it's taking way too long for my God to respond to my problem? If we were able to follow the example of Mary, truly leaving the problem in God's hands and walk away, God would bless us with a deep sense of peace in the midst of the difficulty. But there is a catch. We must always remember what I said just moments ago. The presence of Jesus does not necessarily mean the absence of problems. In other words, our God doesn't always take away our problem and then give us peace. Well, sometimes He does. But sometimes He's going to calm the storm all around us. Other times, He's going to calm us, the person within that storm. Whatever His decision is, there is no need to worry about it. He's got it covered. Story about a man named Bob who wanted to hire someone to do all of his worrying for him. So he goes to one of his friends and says, "Joe, I am willing to pay you $200,000 a year if you will be the person in my life that takes away all my worries upon himself and you leave me at peace with no stress at all." Joe said, "That's a great salary. I can do that for you." And so Joe takes the job. And Joe's first question to Bob was, "Where are you going to get that kind of money?" And Bob says, "I don't know. That's your worry." My friends, when you give your problem to God, they're His. They belong to Him, and really, He can handle it. We don't need to take them back. We don't need to stress about it when they are His. Look at what the Old Testament says about our God. Specifically, it says, our God neither slumbers nor sleeps. What that tells us is that God is already staying up all night. There is no need for us to do the same. Once you take your problems to Him, sleep well, snore loudly. Those problems are His. Have faith that those problems are now God's. They are His concern, not yours. It's also a great lesson that we can take from the servants. Jesus tells the servants, "Take the water to the head waiter." Now, from the perspective of the servant, don't you think that's an odd request? How is that going to solve the problem? They need wine, not water. And what is the head waiter going to say? I don't know if the servants objected or hesitated a bit to such an absurd request. But what I do know is that in the gospel today it says they did as Jesus had told them to do. Notice in the gospel that the water turned into wine on the way in transport. It was dipped out as water. It was sipped up as wine. In other words, the water became wine after the servants obeyed. Here's a great lesson that the servants give us. Before prayers are answered, there must be total obedience, even as crazy as it may sound. May have just said something wise. I want to say that again. Before prayers are answered, there must be total obedience. Obedient acts first, then answered prayers. I'm sure there are times when we find ourselves exactly in the position of those servants in the gospel today. A request has been made in prayer to Jesus. And while He has given us some type of direction, that prayer has not been answered. And so, what are we to do in between the prayer offered and the prayer answered? What does one do during that time? First of all, you do not panic. You remain faithful to your prayers. You do what the servants did. In the acts of obedience, the water is made wine. And not just any kind of wine, but the very best, the best kind of wine. It was truly a blessing of abundance. That's how God answers your prayers. When he sees an act of obedience. He answers us with his very best. I want you to remember when the prodigal son came back. When he came back to his father's home, he got the best of clothes. When the lost sheep was found, he got a ride on the shoulders of that pastor, of that shepherd. When Peter came back after denying Jesus 3 times, he received an embrace of love. That's how our God responds. He gives us the very best in abundance. There is one more truth that I want you to point out that the gospel holds. One of the reasons we have difficulties in our lives is to reveal the glory and the strength of our God. And also to help others believe. This is so essential for us to understand in order to grow in faith. In the gospel, the big event of the wedding was not necessarily the couple. It wasn't even about the wine. The big event was to reveal who Jesus was in hopes that the people would believe in him. And the end result was exactly that. When people saw how Jesus had used the couple's difficult situation to reveal himself, they applauded God, not the couple. The same can happen in our lives. Even as God is present, even as Jesus is by our side, even as he's blessing us, our God can allow a difficult moment in our lives. Or better yet, let me say it in this way. He can entrust us with a bit of suffering in order to reveal his glory and his strength, but also to help others believe in him. It worked in the wedding of Cana in Galilee, and I assure you it can work in our lives as well here in San Angelo, Texas. Through difficulties, we can help others believe. As long as we do what Mary told those servants to do. Do whatever Jesus tells you to do. Because in an act of total obedience, miracles happen. And when miracles happen, people begin to believe in God. And when people begin to believe in God, the church is strengthened. And when the church is strengthened, God is present. In the good times and in the bad. People believe in the way that you respond to your difficulties in life. That's the main event of the gospel today. To reveal his glory, to reveal his strength. You have a choice. When you suffer, you can do everything that Jesus tells you to do, even if it's a bit crazy. Remember, total acts of obedience, then prayer and action. Total acts of obedience, miracles. Miracles, God's presence. Amen.
Amen.